One down, one to go. The RNC begins tonight as the longest-serving White House advisor says she's leaving. Plus, a dual hurricane threat in the Gulf, historic fires in the West, and an asteroid headed for Earth. That's right, 2020 continues. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Monday, August 24th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Good morning, Carlo.
Jill, how was your weekend? Good?
Yes, it was very good. I feel like that headline is straight from The Onion, but unfortunately it's not. It's actually happening.
Nothing is, nothing would surprise me at this point in this year that is now, what, 2/3 of the way done at least?
I feel like it's never ending.
Yeah.
All right, Carlo, here's what you need to know today. Behind in the polls, the Republican Party is going to try to jumpstart President Trump's re-election campaign this week. The president himself is going to be the main attraction at the Republican National Convention. He is expected to speak in the 10 p.m. hour every single night of the RNC with a former Celebrity Apprentice producer working behind the scenes. So that tonight, speakers are going to include Nikki Haley, Senator Tim Scott, and Donald Trump Jr. Carlo, what are you expecting for the week?
I think this is going to be the Trump show, for sure. I mean, the speaker list, which came out over the weekend, half of the keynote speakers are Trump family members, literally half of them. The RNC, interestingly, didn't even put out a written platform this year. That's usually what one of the formalities of these conventions, where the party puts out it tries to define its priorities in some sort of document, and there's usually a bunch of infighting about it. They didn't even bother. In lieu of a platform, the RNC said it basically agrees with everything Trump has done and will continue to do.
I think there's going to
be, yeah, exactly. The version that, right. I think that, President Trump is nothing if not a showman. So I think that there will definitely be some kinds of surprise, some sort of visual surprises. Maybe he shows up on the final night, in front of a crowd somewhere in some airplane hangar. I don't know. But in terms of substance, they have a lot of work to do in convincing voters who may be on the fence why this administration should be given another 4 years, given where this country is. Based on the polling, the president needs to win virtually every persuadable voter in this country. So the question I think this week is going to be, is he going to try and reach out to people beyond the base? Is he going to try and solidify that base? We shall see.
Breaking overnight, meanwhile, Kellyanne Conway announced that she is leaving the White House at the end of the month for family reasons. So she has been one of the president's closest and longest-serving advisors. She was the third campaign manager, the first woman ever. Excuse me. The first woman ever to manage a winning presidential campaign. So she said she's going to take time to focus on her family.
So, she's also, I believe, the only campaign manager for President Trump to never be arrested or indicted. But her husband, George Conway, is also taking a leave of absence from the Lincoln Project, which is that group of former or a group of Republicans who are against President Trump and are putting out all those ads. Their daughter, Claudia Conway, she has been all over social media this weekend. She claimed that she had been abused as a child and that she wants to be emancipated from her family. I don't even really like talking about this stuff because it's really none of our business. But Kellyanne Conway is a big part of this administration, and it does sound like they have some stuff they need to deal with, and I'm glad that they are, and I wish the best to them.
She had said, Kellyanne Conway, "For now and for my beloved children, it will be less drama, more mama."
All right, I like that.
Well said.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay. Meanwhile, President Trump announcing that the FDA would be issuing an emergency use authorization for convalescent blood plasma in treating hospitalized COVID-19 patients. So an update, remember we covered this last week, the treatment had been approved on a, quote, compassionate use basis. The FDA was planning an emergency approval before Dr. Fauci and others urged the FDA to pull back and get more data. The president, though, urged patients who have recovered to donate their plasma. So it was kind of a little confusing because it was competing headlines. We had last week them basically saying they weren't ready to give this the full go-ahead. They needed more info. And then the president having that press conference last night, kind of reversing it.
Yeah, it sounds like he sort of like, strong-armed the FDA into doing this probably earlier than they wanted to. That's sort of what it seems like to me. First of all, you should absolutely. I mean, if you're a recovered COVID-19 patient, you should donate your plasma. J.D. Durkin, our colleague, he did it, and he said it made him feel really good. Just to think there was a chance that the antibodies in his plasma could help other people. So I think, you should absolutely do that. We should also mention this announcement came just a day after the president accused the FDA without any evidence of being part of the deep state and intentionally slowing things down until after the election. Again, what was really happening is they just needed more data. There's been no randomized trials for convalescent blood plasma. So I think everyone is so, worried about, since there's so much pressure on all of these agencies, like just in the media and in the public eye, I think they're very conservative, and they're worried about doing something without having all the possible data. Anyway, the president did cite a study that showed a 35% reduction in deaths using plasma. That study was not peer-reviewed. It was not in a medical journal. So again, I'm hopeful that it works. We've heard stories. We've heard anecdotes of this stuff working. It seems like this is a political move, sort of planned right before the convention. But hopefully we're wrong. Hopefully this is the bridge to the vaccine that we need.
I interviewed a lot of different companies are working on some sort of convalescent plasma treatment. I interviewed the CEO of Sorrento, which is one of these smaller biotech companies that is working on one. And this was a couple months ago, and it sounds super promising. The problem, at least on just the science side of it, is that it's going to be a lot harder to figure out if it's actually effective. We briefly touched upon this last week, because now there's just no group that's going to be getting really a placebo, so you don't know how these patients fare compared to others. And then the issue is that if this doesn't actually if we find out that this isn't really an effective treatment, then we've wasted a lot of time and money on it, as opposed to moving on to something that is. I mean, so that's the potential downside. But
exactly, and I think that what was I going to say? Because I did this for our show on Friday, while talking about plasma before this news came out. But it was basically like you can get this treatment if if you're hospitalized and you ask your doctor, like, they can get you this stuff. The problem is that if there's an emergency authorization from the FDA, you can basically get it without being part of a clinical trial, and they really need that data, right? They need you to be a part of the clinical trial because there's not good studies on this yet.
Moving on to some just crazy weather that's happening right now. The Gulf Coast is preparing for the extremely rare event of back-to-back tropical landfalls. So Marco was downgraded overnight to a tropical storm, is tracking toward the coast of Louisiana, where it will make landfall tonight. And then Tropical Storm Laura is directly behind it and has the potential to be a bigger problem, as that system is expected to strengthen significantly as it approaches the warmer Gulf waters. Laura's path a bit less certain. She's tracking more westward, with Houston and Louisiana in the cone.
Oh my God, it's like you just can't even make it up, right? There's never been two hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time. It looked like we were going to get that for a second there, but I think now that Marco has been downgraded, we probably won't. That being said, this is extremely rare, extremely dangerous, especially because the big storm that we dealt with a couple weeks ago, Jill, that was mostly a wind event. These are going to be rain events. So flooding across the Gulf Coast is really what you should be on the lookout for this week. Again, if you have family members down there, they're urging. I don't think that there's been mandatory evacuations, but they're just urging people to seek high ground. And again, people on the Gulf Coast know how to deal with hurricanes, so we don't have to tell them. But the back-to-back part of this is the thing that spooks me a bit.
The good news is we did speak briefly last week about this potential that they could merge and become one big storm.
Yeah, that's not gonna
happen. What was that? The Kawa?
The Fujiwara effect, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
That's off the table for now.
That luckily is off the table. So now, okay, because we also have another issue to deal with in extreme weather. 1 million acres have now burned in California, the second and third largest fires in the state's history. Still growing to the north and south of San Francisco. They're going to be helped by thunderstorms this week that are expected to bring this bad combination of gusty winds, dry lightning, and light rain. Progress was made over the weekend thanks to favorable weather conditions, but the next few days look pretty grim. This month, 1.3 million acres have already burned. That's about 5 times the acreage lost in all of 2019. Smoke from the fires has reached as far as Kansas, if you can believe it.
I know. I have family in Sonoma, and they haven't been evacuated, but they've been told that they can't leave their home, which they pretty much weren't leaving anyway, I guess, because of COVID. So it's just, it's one thing after another.
But how are they doing? Are they nervous? Are they? What's their mental state right now?
It's so my dad spoke to them. It's my dad's sister, and he said that they were pretty good. They didn't want to go back to San Francisco, so they were going to stick it out. This is the third summer in a row now that the wine country up there has just seen these storms. So they're gonna stick it out for now at least. But like we were talking about, they're ready. They got gas in the car. They're ready to go if they have to. And then, the other thing, they're now dealing with looting on top of it. There's these stories coming out about arrests made of, people looting stores and homes with people who have been evacuated. There's a story about a fire commander in the CZU complex fire, which is one of these 2 Northern California blazes in the Santa Cruz Mountains. He had his wallet stolen out of his car and somebody drained his bank account. It's like, really, folks? Come on, man. As Joe Biden would say, come on, man. But look, Jill, never before have we had the following things happen, which we've reported on in the last couple of weeks. 130 degrees in Death Valley, 2 hurricanes in the Gulf, potentially. More than 1 million acres burned in California. You've got a major political party convention this week that will not mention climate change, following a political convention where it was only mentioned in the abstract. We're whistling past the graveyard here, folks. I don't know how else to say it, but this is what climate change looks like.
I think you just put that really well.
I don't have an answer
as a report.
For you,
when I was a field reporter, I covered a lot of quote unquote 100-year storms that are happening every few years. They're not happening every 100 years anymore. So it
exactly.
tells you what you need to know. And finally, Carlo, in what would be a pretty fitting end to 2020, an asteroid is actually set to pass just by Earth on November 2nd, which is the day before the presidential election. Fortunately for us, the space rock is only 6.5 feet long. It doesn't pose any threat, even if it were to hit us head on, which is about a 1 in 250 chance of happening, according to NASA. But how can they say that if an asteroid that's 6 feet long hits the Earth and you're in its path?
Because it would burn up. I learned this from the disaster movies of the 90s, like Deep Impact and Armageddon. They have to be like a certain size to sort of like breach the atmosphere. So if it's just 6.5 feet, you don't have anything to worry about. The fitting end to 2020 would be if this thing actually did hit and do some real damage, which I shouldn't laugh about, but that's not going to happen. So anyway, there was a little bit of a freak out online this weekend about this, but there's nothing to worry about, at least for right now. There's plenty to worry about, but there's nothing to worry about with this particular asteroid.
So we don't need to get Bruce Willis and
there's no drilling,
Ben Affleck and drill a hole in the asteroid?
No, I think we're going to be all right.
Okay. All right. That's good news, Carla, to end on.
It is.
That's what you need to know for Monday, August 24th.
All right, guys. See you mañana.